Happy Halloween, everybody! So thank you guys for voting in my on my channel about what your next video wanted to be. With that said, we're gonna get into some of the. When I was thinking about this list, I was thinking about doing a top 10 like best ever performances, but there are so many performances, and then you look into the movies that aren't necessarily horror, but fit into the horror landscape. Like for instance, Silence of the Lambs. If you look at IMDb, the script, the tags with it for the type of movie it is are not horror at all. But to me, I look at Hannibal Lecter as a horror character. So this is all my own list, just my own thoughts on 10 of the best performances I've ever seen in what I consider to be horror movies. Coming in number 10, I'm going to go with Mr. Sims, played by Clarence Williams III from the Tales of the Hood, the first movie. He made that movie. When I think of what a good performance is, there are some that are just groundbreakingly like amazing performances, and there are some that if you remove this character, would the movie be good?
Here to be scared of. You understand me?
I've been waiting for you boys.
There have been a Tales from the Hood 2 and 3, and neither one of them reached the level that one did. Considering the fact that Rusty Cundiff was still a director for 2. So the secret sauce of that movie was Clarence Williams III. He was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. He was quirky. He was funny at times, but you always just knew, like he just dove into Mr. Sims. You didn't see Clarence Williams III anymore. He was Mr. Sims in that movie. And that is a role I could never see somebody recreating. Again, like I said, they try to recreate it with other sequels. Nowhere close. And that's not a knock on the actors that portrayed that character after him, but that role was his and he made it his own. And that's why I give my number 10. The one of the best performers that I've ever seen in a horror movie, Clarence Williams III playing Mr. Sims. Coming in at number 9, I'm going to go with Anthony Perkins playing Norman Bates in Psycho 1960. When you think of the character of Norman Bates, he set the blueprint. A very unassuming guy, but could turn on a dime. And considering that he had to play the duality of two different characters, when you look at it from this perspective now, it might not be as strong today as it once was. But the blueprint in playing multiple characters, the blueprint in having that unassuming villain that turns into be a monster and playing it very, very well in a way that, to me, the very last scene of this movie with his look into the camera is absolutely terrifying. As unassuming as Norman Bates, played by him, came across, there were glimpses that you knew this person was absolutely terrifying, and that was because of the work that Anthony Perkins did portraying that character. He was very good at switching on a dime if you need to be. And again, that very last scene stands out in my mind as one of the scariest scenes in all of horror cinema. So for me, number 9 is going to be Anthony Perkins playing Norman Bates from Psycho 1960. Coming in at number 8, I'm going to go with Tim Curry playing Pennywise in the It miniseries. Now, I understand Bill Skarsgård did it years later and recreated that role, and he did very well with that role. But Tim Curry was the best of those two versions. Here's a couple of reasons why. He was given really unassuming makeup. The makeup was simply just a clown. It wasn't made up to make him look terrifying. All the terrifying that he gave came from his acting, 100%. Going from the laughing, joking Pennywise that actually looked welcoming to the terror, the horror-inducing, child-eating, villain that he came to be. And I mentioned this with talking about Anthony Perkins, the ability to flip those sometimes in mid-scene or scene to scene or throughout the movie. When I think by what I mean by that is sometimes when I see when I think of Lucky Number 11. This is not a horror movie, but Josh Hartnett played a character. He played a hitman, but the entire movie long, you didn't know he was who he was, and he played this very meek, mild character throughout the movie until the end, and his flip came at the end. I said that because Tim Curry's flip of Pennywise came literally in mid-scene. He would be happy and jovial and turn terrifying within the span of seconds. And even when he was to make a joke, it was a terrifying joke. It was only funny to him, really. But he set the blueprint. Not only was he really good for the Pennywise character, but as far as clowns go, he stands out in my mind as one of the best portrayed clowns that I've ever seen. So for me, number 8 is Tim Curry playing Pennywise in It. Coming in at number 7, I'm going to go with James McAvoy in Split, playing the Beast slash Dennis slash all the different characters he played. Because of what I just said, that's why he's here. I mean, of all this entire list, I don't know anyone that played that many characters.
Is she in that room? What is this? How many are there?
No. Don't go in there. Don't go in there. Don't worry. I'll talk to him. He listens to me.
My name's Hedwig. I have red socks. He's on the move.
What?
He's on the move.
And had to tap in to that many different personas for a role. Absolutely phenomenal. And not one of them was let down. They each had their own distinct look. They each had their own distinct distinct speech. They each felt like their own character played by one person. I mean, not only did he play it well, but he had to take on a very real thing of a split personality that some people may have and dove deep into that, showing a stark difference from each personality. Absolutely amazing work by him. And my number 7, James McAvoy, playing multiple characters in Split. Coming in at number 6, I'm going to go with Anthony Hopkins, but not for the movie you think. It's going to be for Anthony Hopkins playing Corky in the movie Magic. Now, Magic is amazing. Anthony Hopkins' character, Corky, is a magician, but he's not a very good one, and he's bombing that place that he goes. Well, he ends up being introduced to this dummy and becomes a ventriloquist. And because of that act, it took him to a whole other stratosphere. He was very, very good as a ventriloquist and gave his all to that role. The problem is he got way too attached to the dummy.
Bitch of an orange and drop some pants for you. Shut up, Corky. You do it so good. You ain't better than the garbage man. Ah! Hey, Ben. How do you like it? I think it's going to be terrific. What's with gangrene? Blue Cross repossess your tongue? Come on in, shut up. Come on in, Ben. I'll do the whole routine for you. How the hell did you ever find me? You're amazing. I bet it was that kid cab driver. He must have called the office and found you. Is that right? That's it? Yeah, I told him I was with William Morris. He looked like a hustler, so I gave him 100 to shut him up. How much did you give him to talk?
Doesn't matter.
Right. Right, you're here. That's the main thing. That's it. Right. Come on, grab yourself a seat. And, watch. Just remember that I haven't got this anywhere near performance level yet.
How long you been like this, kid?
Like what? Oh my God, you don't think that was for real? How do you think I rehearse?
Smell good.
It's for the act, for Christ's sakes!
And couldn't distinguish between reality of, is this dummy real? Am I controlling the dummy? Or is the dummy, does the dummy really have his mind of its own? Voicing, obviously, his character Corky and voicing the dummy's character in Fats. Anthony Hopkins was absolutely amazing, to the point where the more you watch the movie, you do start to question the fact on whether or not the dummy was actually alive or not. Now, you know it wasn't, but his acting at least brings that question up. I can't say enough good things. If you've not seen Magic, back from the 70s, also starring Burgess Meredith, one of the best performances I've ever seen. Anthony Hopkins playing Corky in Magic. Coming to number 5, I'm going to go with Kathy Bates playing Annie Wilkes in Misery. Man, I do not want a fan like that, for sure. What I've been talking about it multiple times throughout this video, that I love the fact of being able to play 2 or more roles and crush them both. Annie is a bit quirky. She's a bit odd and kind of just out there. But she's harmless from the town that she's around and everybody she runs into in town and such like that, until she comes across Paul Sheldon, her favorite writer of all time, and he's in a car accident. She nurses him back to health. And then, when the writing wasn't going the way she wanted it to, you saw a complete 180 of her character.
When I was growing up in Bakersfield, my favorite thing in all the world was to go to the movies on Saturday afternoons for the chapter plays.
Cliffhangers.
I know that, Mr. Man. They also call them serials. I'm not stupid, you know. Anyway, my favorite was Rocket Man. And once it was a no-brakes chapter. And the bad guys stuck him in a car on a mountain road and knocked him out and welded the doors shut and tore out the brakes and started him to his death. And he woke up and tried to steer and tried to get out, but the car went off a cliff before he could escape. And it crashed and burned, and I was so upset and excited. And the next week, you better believe I was first in line. And they always start with the end of the last week. And there was Rocket Man trying to get out. And here comes the cliff. And just before the car went off the cliff, he jumped free. And all the kids cheered. But I didn't cheer. I stood right up and started shouting, "This isn't what happened last week! Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us! This isn't fair! He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car!"
Complete 180 of her character. And she, considering there is no supernatural element to this movie, she is terrifying just off of her acting alone. Just off of the way that the lengths she'll go to get her way out of this writer in this movie are just insane. One of the scenes, and one of the scene, the most excruciating scene in the movie, was depicted multiple times in various movies and TV shows after the fact. I remember In Living Color did a depiction of that movie, of that scene in one of their skits back in the day. But it all stands on the heels of Kathy Bates' performances. Kathy Bates was absolutely amazing, to the point where you just didn't know what she would do next. And that's why I have it at my number 5. Number 5, I'm going to go with Kathy Bates playing Annie Wilkes in Misery. All right, guys, at number 4, I'm going to go with Jack Nicholson playing Jack Torrance in The Shining. When you're presented to him, he's a writer taking his family off to a hotel. He can have some time to himself, finish his writing. They can get to see some sights and just have a good time. And when you're introduced to him, he comes across as a very strong family man, someone that takes his profession very seriously. And there really wasn't anything underlying there that you would have thought would have spiraled into what happens as the movie goes on. Jack Nicholson is very good of acting with his face. He doesn't have to say anything. And that's what made him so terrifying in a lot of scenes of this movie, because you see the slow just drop in his humanity and in his sanity, to the point where once he's full insane, he's very, very scary. And the awesome thing about that movie too, and about his performance, was there were so many one-liners, there were so many memorable scenes and memorable lines that he delivered, just of how the way he acted. Here's Johnny has been recreated multiple times. It's still to this day. I mean, it's one of the more iconic scenes. One of the best performances I've ever seen. And for this list, my number 4, Jack Nicholson playing Jack Torrance in The Shining. Coming in at number 3, I'm going to go with Toni Collette playing Annie Graham in Hereditary. Very similar to Jack Nicholson, she is in terms of being able to show a lot with her face. Now, this movie, her and her entire family are grieving the loss of her mother, her husband's mother-in-law, her kids, grandma, and they're each dealing with their grief in their own way. She's dived into her work. She makes these model figurines and model houses and stuff like that. She's diving into her work. Her husband's doing his thing, and her kids are doing their thing. She's trying to keep it together while keeping a relationship with her son that seems to be kind of already iffy as it is. Her son's getting older, not wanting as much to do with the parents as he did maybe when he was younger. And the sister is a little bit odd. She was very attached to Annie's mother, and there's a lot of things going on. I will admit, as a fan of this movie, the first 20 to 25 minutes isn't very exciting, but it's carried on by the acting, because everyone in this movie are very good actors and actresses. After the big scene, and if you haven't seen it, when you see it, you know what I'm talking about. After that scene, it turns into a Toni Collette showcase. Every emotion that you were meant to feel from her, you felt deeply, deeply. From extreme grief to extreme frustration to extreme anger.
Just seems like there might be something you want to say.
Peter.
Like what? I mean, why would I want to say something so I could watch you sneer at me?
Sneer at you? I don't ever sneer at you.
Oh, sweetie, you don't have to. You get your point across.
Okay, so fine, then say what you want to say then.
Peter.
I don't want to say anything. I've tried saying
Okay, so
things.
try again. Release yourself.
Oh, release you mean?
Yeah, fine, release me. Just say it. Just say it.
Don't you swear at me! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that face on your face! So full of disdain and resentment and always so annoying.
And leading to extreme terror. She did it all very, very well. If there was to be an Oscar given to horror performances for the year this movie came out, I think it was 2018, she should have got it. The dinner scene is one of the best depictions of acting that I've seen in horror, and her speech, her soliloquy, whatever you want to call it, when she went off, was legendary. She was amazing in this movie. My number 3, Toni Collette playing Annie Graham in Hereditary. The next two on this list are very hard to distinguish between and pick a better one, but I'm going to have to do it. And again, like I said, these are not the only great performances of in horror. There's been tons of them, but these were the 10 that came off of my head that stood out to me when I watched them. I'm going to go with number 2, 2B, Anthony Hopkins playing Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Now, there are some that don't consider this a horror movie. Fine, I do. Because there's a horror character in this movie. Hannibal Lecter eats people. What more horror do you need from that? Now, the movie itself was not presented as a horror movie. It's more crime, drama, suspense, thriller, stuff like that. I get all that. But you cannot tell me that when you stood on the other side of the glass with Clarice, that you were not terrified of this man.
You see a lot, Doctor. But are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? What about it? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're afraid to.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
To the point where, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm watching it, and we know there's a glass there. This has to do with the direction too. It seemed like with Anthony Hopkins' looks that he would give, it seemed like there's no longer any more glass, and he's talking directly to you, and he can tear your face off at any moment, and decides not to for whatever reason. He didn't have to play multiple characters. He was one character, but he was phenomenal as that one character, to the point where Anthony Hopkins was not the first person to play Hannibal Lecter. He was played by somebody else in Manhunter years prior. His role was not nearly as big, but when he was on screen, he wasn't as commanding. It's Anthony Hopkins was. He made Hannibal Lecter, and every time he was on scene, he stole the scenes. He made the movie, and it's a good movie overall. But you take him out, you just have another crime drama. And even if they're chasing Buffalo Bill, who in his own right is a pretty creepy villain, there would not have been the same level of remembrance of this movie and depth to this movie without the portrayal of Hannibal Lecter by Anthony Hopkins. My number 2, Anthony Hopkins playing Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Coming in number 1, I'm going to go with Franklin from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the very first one. He was just absolutely phenomenal. The way that he portrayed the fear in the movie. I'm sorry, I can't do it with a straight face. I'm just joking. My true number 1, Gary Oldman playing Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992. Another person like Jack Nicholson or Toni Collette that can do a lot with that can show a lot of emotion with their face. He was also given, he had a great movie around him, a great direction as well. But the reason why I put him number 1 is because the character that he's playing, he took on Dracula. There were some heavy hitters before him. Bela Lugosi did a great job. Christopher Lee did a great job. Frank Langella did a great job. There were a lot of Draculas before Gary Oldman, but he took what they did, made it his own, and took it to another level. He had to play different versions of the Count. The older version, the younger version, the werewolf, the vampire bat version, and each one, granted, he had makeup for all of them. They still had their own distinct sound.
You
think you can destroy me? You're mine.
Sacred blood of Christ!
I usurp the cross. I who commanded nations hundreds of years before you.
And their own distinct way of commanding the scene because of his acting. He absolutely carried that movie. And he was not playing by himself. He had quite a bit of other well-known actors and actresses in that movie. But he carried that movie and again elevated a age-old lore in Dracula and made it his own and set a new standard for what to play with that character. So my number one horror movie performance of this list is Gary Oldman playing Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula. So that's my list, guys. What did you guys think? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not enjoy it? What are some of your favorite performances in horror movies? Leave them in the comments. Again, happy Halloween. You guys be safe today. Enjoy yourselves. See you guys next time.